Welcome to the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College. It's great to have everyone back here again. As many of you know, New Hampshire has a long tradition of political and civic engagement, and we're always very, very happy to take part in that process. It is my pleasure today to welcome United States Senator Jeff Flake from Arizona. Senator Flake was first elected to the Senate in 2013 and previously served 6 terms in the House of Representatives. Senator Flake has been an advocate for limited government, responsible spending, and free trade. Recently, he authored Conscience of a Conservative, a rejection of destructive politics and a return to principle, which has been described by the New York Times, among others, as a thoughtful defense of traditional conservatism. Prior to entering politics, Senator Flake served as the executive director of the Goldwater Institute, which is an Arizona-based Republican think tank. Senator Flake is a dual graduate of Brigham Young University, where he earned his bachelor's and his master's degrees. He currently lives in Mesa, Arizona, with his wife Cheryl, who's with us today, and their 5 children. Their son Dallin is also joining us today. Senator Flake will be focusing on his continuing message of country over party. Please join me in welcoming United States Senator Jeff Flake.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be represented or hosted by the New England Council and St. Anselm's. I can't believe the memorabilia around here and what it feels like to be here. Some of my best political memories are traveling around with Senator McCain when he campaigned. One memorable event here in New Hampshire, we traveled right up close to the Canadian border. And he was going to talk about prescription drugs, importation. That was one of his issues. And so we got there, it was snowing, it was an absolute blizzard. We got out of the bus, the only press that were with us were the ones that were with us on the bus. They got off and Senator McCain and I were shivering in just a light sport coat. Senator McCain said, "I need cheap prescription drugs because I've got pneumonia now." But as we were standing there, some guy rides by on a bike. And it was just the most surreal thing that I've ever seen. But anyway, Cheryl and I were looking for a perfect place for a quiet getaway evening or afternoon and weekend. And so we're glad that all of you could join us for that quiet time. But I stand before you today, the rarest of species, the American conservative. Americanus never Trumpus. Subgenus rhino. There's a scurrilous rumor afoot that we're not only rare, but endangered. I don't believe it. I think I'll have to ask Gordon Humphrey or somebody else what he thinks about this. But seriously, when the putatively conservative party loses its grasp on the meaning of basic terms, like, for instance, the word conservative, then that could just be a sign that we've taken a wrong turn somewhere. Such is the conservative dilemma. Say, hypothetically, in 2018, we have a libertine, budget-busting president who exudes chaos and dotes on authoritarians, who's replaced the State Department with Twitter, lives in the Golden Palace when he's not in the White House, and he's the conservative. Just for argument's sake, I grew up busting broncs and castrating bulls. My wife cuts my hair because I'm too cheap to go to a barber. And she says, "Your hair better look good today." I killed earmarks while in the House, scored a perfect 100 with the Club for Growth, and have a lifetime rating of 94 with the American Conservative Union. And I'm the rhino. The amazing thing is that in Washington right now, among people in my party, when you hear these 2 comparative profiles, people will say, "Yeah, that's about right. What's the problem?" It's like invasion of the body snatchers. What have we done with all the conservatives? In all seriousness though, we have a long road to hoe to recover as a party. The collapse of our principle and the narrowing of our base didn't happen overnight, and quite obviously won't be fixed anytime soon. As a lifelong Republican, the health of my party is of great concern to me. Because to have a healthy politics, you need to have healthy parties. But as important as the Republican Party is to me, my country is more important. It's well past time for us to put country before party. We've tried the other way for too long. We've done our worst. Now it's time to do our best. As a kid, for as long as I can remember, we had a 3x5 card stained with vegetable oil, cookie dough, and brownie mix. It was pasted to our refrigerator. It read, "Assume the best, look for the good." To-do list, wedding invitations, school pictures, ribbons from the county fair, they all came and went over the years, but that card remained. Assume the best, look for the good. That was as close to a motto as our family on the ranch had. So much of this phrase still adorns, so much so that this phrase still adorns the refrigerators with handwritten cards and even hangs above the doorways in stenciled wood in the homes of nearly all of my parents' children, all 11 of them. That's how I got elected, by the way. I'm so grateful to my parents for giving me that creed, assume the best, look for the good, as a prism through which to see the world. And like one of those to-do lists on the fridge, we conservatives have a few things that we are in desperate need of reminding. In fact, if I didn't know better, I would say that as a political movement, we've been out of our minds lately. There are those in my party, for instance, who continue to marvel at the strategic underpinnings of the daily chaos set loose in the White House. You just have to shake your head. That which is strategic must first be thought, then thought through. Then a true leader has the confidence to have people more experienced than he tell him that why it might just be a terrible idea. Subject area experts become involved, maybe an astute lawyer who can give advice on whether something you want to do adheres to the Constitution. White papers are drafted, staffing happens, key people are read in, policy is made. The time it takes for a notion to tickle the cerebellum, send a signal to your fingers to pick up your phone, and thumb type a tweet is not a comparable process. We should know by now that there is no strategic brilliance to marvel at here. No, by now we know that it is chaos for its own sake, projected onto the world. Yet we are told by the cognoscenti in Washington to ignore the president's words. Pay attention to what he does, not what he says, people say. Those calls, of course, ignore the entirety of American history and exhort us to adopt a new norm to accommodate undignified public behavior just for this one president. In the sweep of our history, we have never been urged to not listen to what a president says. Such admonitions are preposterous now. Accommodating the unacceptable, willfully adding deafness to our already stunning blindness, this gives a whole new meaning to Senator Moynihan's fallacious phrase, defining deviancy down. We will get through this, and when we do, perhaps what will most be remembered from this period will be the president's war on objective reality and the reflexive impulse to speak falsely. This is a problematic trait in business. It's a serious problem in personal relationships. But as a defining character trait, absolutely devastating in an American president. If one's word is one's bond, then the bonds that bind Americans to each other and to the world are truly imperiled. There is nothing that will be more vital to expunge from the American record than this frenzied attack on the truth. There are few jobs that will be more difficult than putting that particular horse back in the barn. Such is the power of the president to either build or destroy. And the irony should not escape us here. that someone whose name became known to us as a builder would have such a penchant for destruction? What does it say about conservatives that our message is now so different from the words that my parents taught me? So different as to amount to a rejection of the optimistic vision of Ronald Reagan, the extraordinary decency of George H.W. Bush, the principled constitutionalism of Barry Goldwater. What does it say that we have instead succumbed to what can only be described as a propaganda-fueled dystopian view of conservatism? And what does it mean to say, and what does it say in turn about the stewardship of America and its institutions? What it says is that we are as capable as anyone in forgetting our principles and our priorities and putting politics before party. Populist resentments may feel good in the moment, but indulging in them is destructive and self-destructive and offers no solution to the very real problems that give rise to the resentments in the first place. Manipulating populist resentments is the oldest trick in the book, and it is shameful. When we allow ourselves to prioritize winning at all cost over what is best for the country, when we ignore conscience in the face of what we know is wrong, when we reduce our rich democracy to a series of purely binary calculations, then we have chosen our political interests over the public interest, and in so doing, we inflict great harm on the country. When we excuse on our side what we attack on the other, we are hypocrites. If we do this as a practice, then we are corrupt. If we continually accept this conduct as elected officials, then perhaps we shouldn't be elected officials. Acting on conscience and principle is the manner in which we express our moral selves, and as such, loyalty to conscience and principle should supersede loyalty to any man or party. We can all be forgiven for failing in that measure from time to time. I certainly put myself at the top of the list of those who fall short in that regard. I am holier than none. But too often, we rush not to salvage principle, but to forgive and excuse our failures and the failures of our partisans, maybe even deny them, so that we might accommodate them and go right on failing until the accommodation itself becomes our principle. In that way and over time, we can justify almost any behavior and sacrifice almost any principle. That is where we find ourselves now, I'm afraid. We came to a fork in the road back there somewhere, and we went the wrong way. We took the road too often traveled of venality and mendacity and political expediency. We've gone farther and faster down that road than anyone has before. It's now time to take the road less traveled. It's a harder path, but we will be better for its difficulty. We will get through this, and when we do, there will be much work to repair the damage. There will have to be an accounting for how we got here, so that we may never find ourselves here again. There will have to be an American restoration, and for the sake of the common good and for basic human decency, we'll have to create a new politics. This will be the obligation of all of us, those of us in elected office, those of us who will soon not be, and those of us too smart to engage in politics in the first place. Just as happens after a great storm leaves ruin in its wake, we will come together and rebuild, to shore up the foundations of our institutions that have seen such a gale lately from that unpredictable storm in the White House. We will throw our backs into reinforcing the beams of American justice and make sure that never again will the independence of the judiciary be so threatened and the tenets of justice be so abused. It is a measure of how far we have fallen that we must fight for the basic ideas of American liberty and for the preservation of basic norms, such as the Attorney General is not the President's personal lawyer, and the FBI Director does not owe the President personal loyalty, but rather loyalty to the Constitution, just to name but two. In the wake of this storm, we will once again make clear to our allies that we are allies. And we will never again be afraid to remind friend and foe alike that it is the values that make America, America. We will not nod and wink at dictators, nor will we congratulate them for the good job they are doing in their programs of extrajudicial killings, nor will we host them in the Oval Office, nor will we hesitate to punish them for attacking our elections. We will be crystal clear and unambiguous in our defense of this country against the rogue ambitions of the likes of Vladimir Putin. There can be no passivity regarding the demonstrated Russia threat. If this president saw it as his mandate to come in and turn the system upside down, to break the logjam and get things done, then it strains comprehension how going easy on dictators who attack us and how undermining the independence of our justice system are part of the solution to breaking up Washington's partisan logjam. They are not part of the solution, of course. Rather, they are among the bizarre features of an anomalous presidency, and it is our duty going forward to make sure that they remain anomalous and never become thought of as normal. How anomalous is this behavior? At a Pennsylvania rally just days ago, the president sought to quiet the crowd from booing the mention of North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, just as he encouraged and reveled in a chorus of jeers for the U.S. news media. This was the same speech, of course, in which he taunted a member of Congress for having a low IQ. How anomalous? Referring to the media as the enemy of the people is not normal, nor is it acceptable. It is hard to say whether the president is aware of that phrase's ignoble pedigree, or whether the impulse just comes naturally to him. Either way, dictators around the world are borrowing from the president's usage of the term fake news to silence legitimate criticism and opposition. If my party is going to try to pass off this degradation of the United States and our values from the White House as normal, if we're going to cloister ourselves in the alternative truth of an erratic leader, if we're going to refuse to live in the world that everyone else lives in, and reckon with the daily reality that they face, including the very real and understandable anxiety that they feel, then my party does not deserve to lead. We will get through this, and when we do, how refreshing it will be to once again have leaders who can take criticism and not succumb to the impulse to attack the critic and the criticism, or who reflexively calls anything that doesn't suit him fake news or un-American or treasonous. How refreshing it will once again be to know where the buck stops. That poor buck, lost out there, looking for someone, somewhere to take responsibility. F. Scott Fitzgerald, near the beginning of one of the great American novels, The Great Gatsby, had his main character, Nick Carraway, after a period of trauma and disillusionment, wanting for the world to stand at moral attention forever, no longer interested in riotous excursions. The United States, after this riotous excursion, would do well to stand at moral attention for a spell. I don't know about forever, Mr. Fitzgerald, I admire the ambition, but after the past couple of years, I'd settle to have the world stand at moral attention for a day or two. That would be a good start. We could all stand to be chastened for our part in this. It has been a long, tortured process that has gotten us here, and it will take accountable leadership and good old American willpower to get us out of here, to once again put the interests of the people who elected us ahead of the prerogatives of power. It shouldn't be hard because it is so basic, but it will be hard. To restore leadership that is aware of and cherishes our constitutional framework, which by design is meant to force compromise. It shouldn't be hard because it is basic, but it will be hard. To once again have a leader that assumes that Democrats and Republicans are not intractable enemies, but are competing friends. Leadership that recognizes the once seminal American notion of the common good, It shouldn't be hard because it is so basic, but it will be hard. To swing this pendulum away from the toxicity of our current moment, we must recognize the good in our opponents. These days, administrations are designed to vanquish opponents, and the axiom, elections have consequences, has become nothing short of a threat. We must turn away from this brand of poisonous politics, the kind of poison that has the president slinging insults like a bad comic at a cheap roast. Yes, the pendulum swings, thank goodness, and the people themselves will show us the way out of here. If this sounds like a call to new politics, it is. But it is just as much a call to the old politics, the best traditions of America, of true leadership and vision, of Lincoln's malice toward none and charity for all. We will get through this, and when we do, our institutions will have been severely tested. Sometimes I tell myself, hopefully, that the pillars of our democracy have seen worse than us, and they have survived. Perhaps I flatter us. But it is the story of America that we will be better off for the hard lessons of this experience. We are much better and more decent than Washington shows us to be. We are a good people. We are deeply resourceful and resilient. And our greatness is based on no one man who alone can fix it, but rather on enduring ideas of self-governance and the rule of law that have been the model for the world for centuries, ideas that can be mocked but not marred. When I was a kid, after a good storm, we would ride our horses to the highest ridge and gain the high ground to survey the damage. But the thing about gaining the high ground is, from up there, you can see beyond the damage too. You can see everything. That's the job before us, to get through this and beyond. Let's take the high ground again. Thank you again for this opportunity to be here.